everyone. This is Starry Ari's ASMR. I am Ari, and today I am set up in my kitchen to bake some delicious sugar cookies. At least I hope that they will turn out delicious. So I am using a recipe that I have used before, and I just have my little recipe box over here holding my recipe card. And these are a no-chill sugar cookie recipe, which I really want for today because I don't want to have to take the time to wait and chill them. So I'm excited to do this one again, but I am adding some pumpkin pie spice extract to make these cookies like a pumpkin spice cookie. And then I am planning to decorate them with some maple royal icing. So I also have some maple extract. So I'm going to make the royal icing with that, and then it will be like a pumpkin pie spice cookie with a maple icing. And I think that sounds delicious. So I also bought some cute Halloween themed cookie cutters. So I will do some fun Halloween shapes as well. So this video is going to be a mix of me talking regularly, and then I'm going to add in some voiceovers because, as you can see over here, I do have a stand mixer, and I much prefer to use my stand mixer when I'm baking cookies just because it is just so much easier than hand mixing or using a hand mixer. That's so much more tiring for me. And we have this lovely stand mixer, so I'm going to use that. But it's really loud sometimes, so when I'm using that and if I'm doing something while it's going, I'll just add in a voiceover to kind of explain the steps and show you how I'm going to make these cookies. So I am not the best baker. I like baking, but like it's just, very amateurish. I have done sugar cookies with royal icing a few times before, and my decorations have always come out quite terrible, and I find that I usually do best when I can just dip the cookies, let the icing drip off the front, and then just let them dry like that. But I'm going to try, I think, to do a couple of different colors of icing, so we'll see how that goes. So I first needed to gather all of my ingredients, which as you can see I have done here. So we need 1 whole cup of room temperature butter. So I have these 2 sticks of butter here. They've been sitting out to come up to room temperature a little bit. And each stick of butter is half a cup. So I have 2 sticks of butter there. And then we also need 1 1/3 cups of powdered sugar. So I have my powdered sugar container there. We need 1 large egg. I've got the 1 egg there. I need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I just use imitation vanilla because it is so much cheaper. But I have that. We need 3 3/4 cups of flour. I have my flour here. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Baking powder right there. Half a teaspoon of salt, which I do not have because the original recipe called for unsalted butter, and I'm using margarine, which is salted slightly. So I'm going to leave the salt out just because this does have some in it. And then what's not on this recipe card is my pumpkin pie spice extract. So this is actually a liquid of pumpkin pie spice, so it's an extract that you can add in to recipes. I've never used this before, but I saw it at the store when I was grocery shopping, and I thought that this would be like a great idea. So I'm going to try and add 1 teaspoon of the pumpkin pie spice, and I know that the cookies are good without any extra flavoring like this. Like, they're good with just the vanilla, so I feel like they're going to be good anyways. but I'm hoping that adding 1 teaspoon of the pumpkin pie spice extract, they will have like a yummy pumpkin pie spice flavor. So I'm gonna give this a try and we'll see how that goes. So I also have on this side our directions. So the first step is to preheat the oven to 375 Fahrenheit and line baking sheets. I've already done that, so my oven is already preheating. The next step is to beat butter and sugar together until combined takes about 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm going to put the butter and the powdered sugar together in my stand mixer. So I have my stand mixer here, and it does have the paddle attachment on it. And then we're going to go ahead and put our sticks of butter right into the bowl. If I can open my sticks of butter. That is 1 stick. And that's 2 sticks. Alright, so we have our butter here. Next thing we need is our powdered sugar. And we need 1 1/3 of a cup. So I am going to use my 1/3 cup measuring scoop. So I need 4 of these scoops. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we are all done with our powdered sugar for now, so I'm going to move this off to the side. And then now we need to beat our sugar and butter together. I usually set my stand mixer to a medium speed and then let it go for probably about 5 minutes, just until the butter and sugar are fully creamed together. Sometimes I do need to stop it and scrape the sides just to make sure that all of the butter gets mixed in with the sugar. Alright, our butter and sugar look like they are nicely mixed together now. So the next step that we need to do is add the egg and the vanilla extract. So I'm going to add in our 1 egg. And then now we need our vanilla and our pumpkin pie spice extract. So I have my 1 teaspoon here. We need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I actually have this older bottle that I'm trying to get through, so I'm going to see how much of this we have. It's 1 teaspoon. That is 2. That was the perfect amount for 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then I'm going to get this pumpkin pie spice extract, and I'm adding 1 teaspoon of this extract, which I hope doesn't turn out to be a lot. I feel like is 1 teaspoon. Oh, that smells so good. And I'm going to now go ahead and mix those together. I usually let this mix for a good bit, and sometimes it clumps up like this, but usually after adding the dry ingredients later, it kind of turns out okay. Now I'm going to take this spatula and just scrape around the bowl and get all of this butter off of the sides. I chose to cut down the video a little bit, but I did end up stopping the stand mixer 2 more times to scrape down the sides, so sometimes you just need to do it a little bit extra just to make sure that everything fully mixes together. I usually let this mix for quite a while, so this is an instance when having the stand mixer really pays off so that I don't have to do it by hand. Alright, so I'm now going to add our flour and baking powder. So for our flour, we need 3 3/4 of a cup. So I have a few different measuring cups. I have my 1 cup scoop here, and I also have a spoon to help me spoon the flour. And then I also have a 1/4 cup measuring scoop. So first we need 3 of these 1 cup scoops. I realized that I actually wanted my stand mixer going just at a low speed while I added in the flour little by little. So that was the first scoop, and then I just spooned some more flour in for the second scoop. This is the third cup. And then I do 3 of these 1/4 cup scoops to equal 3/4 of a cup. I also made quite a bit of a mess while I was scooping the flour, so I wanted to just take a moment and try and clean up the counters a little bit. Next, I needed to add the baking powder, and I needed 2 teaspoons of this. So I just kind of sprinkle it around into the dough. And then I let that fully mix together until it comes into this nice dough texture. Alright, so we have our cookie dough here now all ready. So I'm going to take this out of the stand mixer and set up my workstation so that we can roll out these cookies. I have my workstation fully set up now. So I have this lovely wooden cutting board that I'm going to roll out my dough onto. I have my baking sheet over here with a little silicone like baking mat. And then as you can see here, I have 3 adorable little Halloween shapes for these cookies. And these came with 3 different sizes, but I think I'm probably only really ever going to use this largest size, but I still got these small ones out just in case. So I went ahead and just put those above my rolling pin here. And then over here I have a bowl of powdered sugar. So this was one tip that I had seen when you were rolling out sugar cookies is that instead of using flour, you can sprinkle your work surface with powdered sugar, and it helps the dough not be as sticky, and it doesn't kind of like dilute it down or make it a little bit like a different texture with the added flour. So I've really enjoyed that tip, and I'm going to do that again today. So I'm first going to take my bowl, take a pinch of powdered sugar, and just sprinkle it around the work surface and just spread that out. Here we go. And then I am going to sprinkle my rolling pin a little bit too. Luckily, this dough isn't very sticky, or at least it hasn't been in the past, so I don't foresee us having too much of an issue. Alright, so I think that our work surface is prepped. I'm going to now move the dough onto here. So here is the dough that we're working with. I'm going to just roll it around on the powdered sugar just a little bit, and then in the spots where it's picking it up, I'm going to distribute some more powdered sugar just to really make sure that the dough isn't sticking to our surface too much. Sometimes it happens anyways, but that's okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll this out. Okay, I think I probably could have divided my dough in half to be able to roll it out a little bit thinner. But on this first go, I'm going to leave it like this. So we have our dough rolled out, and I'm going to go ahead and just grab our cookie cutters. These cookies are going to come out pretty thick, but I think the next few batches I will roll out to be a little bit thinner. Just press the cookie cutters into the dough, and then I can go ahead and just lift it up just like that. So we have our pumpkin. I like to be able to kind of like tear away the dough from some of the shapes. I want to add a little bit extra hanging off our little ghost. And our little bat. Now I'm just going to keep going just like that until we've used up all of this dough. And I do like to kind of move the shapes around to try and use as much of the dough each time as possible. And just kind of tear away the excess. I think that doing cutout sugar cookies is so satisfying. I just love rolling out the dough and being able to do the little cookie shapes. And I think these ones are really cute. I must put that scrap of dough on the pan. It's our little ghost friend. And our pumpkin. This bat cookie is really convenient because it kind of gets into these like weird amounts of space left in the dough. Bat. And our pumpkin. And our ghost. And I think I will try and fit enough for one more of each. If I can, we'll see. I don't think the bat will quite fit. No, that's okay. Okay, so we now have a full sheet of cookies to go ahead and put in the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in, and I'm going to bake them for I think about 8 minutes, and then I will check on them. Alright, and while those cookies bake, I got another baking sheet with a silicone baking mat, and I'm going to roll out some more cookies. That way we will have some more ready to go as soon as those get pulled out of the oven. So I'm going to spread some more powdered sugar on the work surface. I'm glad that we didn't really have too much trouble with the dough sticking, so that's good. It's always kind of bothersome. And let's go ahead and roll this one out. Got my pumpkin and my little ghost, and then a bat. And just kind of peeling away some of that excess dough. Our first pumpkin from this batch. And let's grab this ghost now. feel like that used up that space pretty well. There's some extra dough on this one that I'm going to try and take off. There we go. Ghost. I hope that these turn out alright. They are smelling pretty strong, so I'm worried that maybe I put in too much pumpkin pie spice extract. I was just winging it, going with whatever my heart felt, and maybe I should have looked up a good conversion, or like what is typically a good amount to put into cookies. But they smell really good. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the rest of this dough. And just form it back into a ball. And sprinkle our surface again with some more powdered sugar. The pumpkin. Ghost. Get some of that excess dough. And a little bit. And I might have enough dough to do maybe one more or two more cookies. Maybe enough to just do like one more pumpkin. And then I'm just going to do one little round cookie with this extra dough. Just like that, just a little circle cookie. And then now this baking sheet is all ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in the oven. Alright, so this first batch of cookies has been cooling on the baking sheet for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and just move them onto this wire rack to cool a little bit further. So we have our bats. I think the bats turned out really cute. We have our ghosts. Okay, I'm going to kind of like tuck their tails like that. And then we don't think I can save space with the pumpkins. Alright, so now I'm just waiting on the second batch to come out of the oven and cool, and then I will transfer them. Alright, this is the second batch of cookies over here. They have baked and cooled for about 5 minutes on the pan. So I'm going to go ahead and move them to the baking or the cooling sheet as well. And this recipe does specify that these cookies should not be brown. So they do kind of look, if you're used to your cookies browning, they might look a little underbaked, but they're not meant to brown. So don't fear if that happens to you. Got our little pumpkins. I did end up moving these pumpkins a little bit so that I could fit more up here. It's a little bit crowded. I need to get a second cooling sheet, I think. And then our one little sad round cookie. Alright, so I'm going to let these fully cool for a little bit, and then for the night I'm going to transfer them to an airtight container, and then tomorrow I'm going to decorate them with the royal icing. So it is the next day, and my cookies have been cooling overnight, so it is time for me to make my royal icing. So as you can see, I've already gathered some ingredients here, and then this is my recipe card for my cookie icing, my royal icing, and I need 2 cups of powdered sugar, so my powdered sugar there. I need 1.5 tablespoons of meringue powder. I've already measured that out. It's in this little cute container. 4 to 5 tablespoons of water. I'm going to start with 4 and then see if I need to thin out my icing at all. I'll add an extra, but I don't think I'm going to need to. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of flavoring if wanted. I do want to use this maple extract, so I have that. And then food coloring. So because we are doing pumpkins, ghosts, and bats, so I wanted to do a couple of different colors. I'm not sure if I'm going to use all of these, but my idea is to leave the ghosts white, so just the regular coloring of the icing. The pumpkins obviously orange, and I pulled out a leaf green if I want to get fancy and do a tiny bit of icing colored green and do like a little leaf. I honestly don't think I'm going to do this, but I have it out just in case. And then I have this purple or this violet because I thought the bats would look really cute with a purple color, because I've heard that black food coloring can be a little bit tricky to work with. So I also have the black out in case I want to like deepen the purple color a tiny bit or anything. I do have this, but I also could potentially use it with a tiny bit of icing for some detailing, like if I want to do little eyes on the pumpkins and the bats. I do have that. So we have everything that I need. I'm going to set this just right here on the top of my recipe card box. And then I have my stand mixer with the whisk attachment. So that's what I'm going to be using today. So the first thing that I need to do is add everything into the stand mixer. So I'm going to start with my powdered sugar. For this, I need 2 cups of powdered sugar. So I'm going to use my 1/2 cup just to make it easier to scoop. That's 1. That's 2. and 4. And now I'm going to add this meringue powder. And this is basically just an egg white substitute. So I've got that. I need my water. And then lastly, for what's going in here, is this maple extract. And then I'm going to mix this all up and then separate it out for the individual colors. Alright, and then now I'm going to go ahead and lower the top of the stand mixer, and we are going to mix this until I have the right consistency for my icing. I'm not the best at judging the consistency for my icing, but I usually try to go for a 10 to 12 second icing, I think. Again, for this mixture, I do like to stop the mixer and scrape down the sides just to make sure that everything gets mixed together nicely. What I've seen online is that a good way to test your icing consistency is to either make a line or watch a drip into the icing and count how many seconds it takes to form back together. So I was just testing that here, didn't like the consistency, so I wanted it to go for a little bit longer. Alright, so I went for, I think, about a 10-second consistency for my icing. I wanted it to be a little bit thicker. So I think that this is all ready to go. I'm going to let it kind of finish dripping off a little bit. And then I'm going to scoop some of this into some bowls so that I can color the icing individually. Okay, so I have 2 other little bowls here that I'm going to put some of this icing in. And then that way we can color them separately. Some of our icing separated out now, and I am going to keep this icing white for the ghosts. And for the ghosts, I think I might actually just dip them in this icing rather than individually pipe them, because I just kind of want them all white anyways. And then that way, if I have any extra just plain white icing, I will know after I dip all of the ghosts, and I can use some of that for details, maybe for the eyes on the bats if I want, things like that. Alright, so I have my little ghost cookies just on this little Halloween themed plate. So I last night had separated the cookies out by shape and then just saran wrapped them for the night. I'm actually going to take a toothpick and pop some of these bubbles first. I'm not going to be too picky about how my icing turns out because these are just cookies that I'm making for fun. I did try our little small cookie last night and it was really, really tasty. And then this frosting smells delicious with the maple. So I'm going to just take a cookie. They're kind of imperfect on the top, but that's okay. I'm going to just sit it in the icing and then let some of that excess kind of drip off. just kind of spread it around. I do kind of want to make sure that it gets all around the cookie. And one trick that I learned for that is you can just take a little toothpick and spread it around these edges. And then you can kind of clean up some of the edges just a bit with a toothpick like that, just so that it turns out a little bit smoother. And popping some of those little icing bubbles that are coming up. And then I'm going to set this on my little wire rack to dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and move right on to the next cookie. So I'm going to dip it, lift it up, shake off some of that excess icing. I feel like my hands do usually get a little bit dirty during this step, but honestly, I just prefer to do this than to individually pipe the icing on all of the cookies when I know that they're all just getting this one individual color. Now I'm going to clean up some of these edges just a little bit. So this one you can see here had a bit of a rough edge from the cookie. Just trying to smooth that out a little bit. This one has a really sad part on his head, so I'm going to really try and fill that in. I suppose I could probably use the backs of the cookies too, just because they turned out a little bit smoother, but I don't think I'm going to worry about it too much. This one I am going to try and smooth that icing all the way around the head a little bit, just to fill in some of that cratering that happened. I do think that you would get a neater edge, of course, if you actually piped your icing, but again, I feel like piping just takes so much longer and I'm not good at it. So I find that tipping the cookies is just faster, and I think that they still turn out pretty cute, especially these ones when the design calls for it to be all one color right off the bat. And then if I want to add any details like little eyes or something, I can add it just right on top of this icing. Alright, there's another ghost friend. Oh no, look at that arm. That's so sad. The one spare cookie that we had, that we tasted, I thought it was pretty good just by itself. And I was worried that the pumpkin spice flavoring was going to be too strong because it was smelling really, really strong in the kitchen. But I think that it came out perfect. I honestly maybe could have had even just a little bit more, but because I'm pairing it with this generally like how those taste together. Rather than like if one part of it was super strong and the other part was super strong, like it might come out like a little bit too much. This is very fun to go through and kind of like smooth out the edges on the cookies. It's very satisfying. Just pop some of those air bubbles. And I think I'm going to send 6 of each shape with my husband to his work, and then I will enjoy the rest of the cookies here at home. But that's always kind of fun to have somewhere to bring the cookies, because I think it's really fun to bake, but I also don't need a ton of cookies, and I don't want to go through the trouble for like a really small batch of cookies. Alright, so that was all of the ghost cookies. So I'm going to go ahead and let those dry, and while they're drying we can start coloring our other icing. Okay, so I have my 2 bowls of extra icing here, and I might need a little bit more in each, but we'll kind of see where we're at. So I think I'm going to do this one in orange, and then this one in purple for the bats. So we have my little my food coloring things here. So I'm going to go ahead and open these up, and then I'm actually going to take a clean toothpick and just puncture right through it, just like that. And then also, because now what I can do is just take this toothpick with a little bit of food coloring on it. It's actually maybe quite a bit. And then we're going to add that into the icing and give it a good stir and see if that is enough food coloring. It's a very cool color though, with all of the swirls. In the camera, it's coming off way more yellow than it actually is. In real life, for some reason, it's like much closer to this orange, but the camera makes it look bright yellow. It's super wild, but I think that this is pretty much the color that I am happy with. So I'm going to leave that for now, and maybe I will wait to color the bats until later. So I'm going to do these pumpkins next. And then I do have a fun idea for how I want to do these pumpkins, so I am going to try and pipe it. I saw a trick for filling up your piping bags is you take a cup and then you flip your piping bag around the edges, kind of just like that, and then now you can actually scoop the icing right into the bag and have it be a little bit less messy. Okay, so here are the pumpkin cookies. I think I'm gonna just work on one at a time. I have bagged my icing. I haven't trimmed the top of the icing bag bag yet, but my idea for these pumpkin cookies is to do little segments. So I want to do an outline here on this side and then an outline here on this side, and then leave this space empty until these dry, and then fill in the middle section so that it looks like little pumpkin segments. I'm gonna try that. We're gonna see how that goes. It might end up just kind of flooding in anyways, so we're just kind of winging it. I sped some of these sections up because I was piping painfully slowly. Okay, now I'm going to just kind of fill in that center of that segment, and then I'm going to take a toothpick. Oh no, I'm already messing up. Okay, and I'm going to take my toothpick and just drag that through. Just like that, kind of fill it out a little bit. Try and clean up that one line. I think these are going to be super wonky, but that's alright. We're just kind of working with it. Here we go. So I'm going to let that one dry for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and try this next one. I did trim the tip of the icing bag pretty large, so that's why these lines I think are coming out pretty big. I have no idea if this is actually going to work to have them like dry separately and then do the one kind of in the center, but I had this idea and I feel like it would be cute, but I probably should have looked up more about actual cookie decorating before I did something like this. But this is fun. I think it's fun to kind of try new things, see if they work or not, you know. I'm actually going to move these over to the baking tray while those side edges are kind of drying. I have no idea how to hold these piping bags. I'm not good with piping bags. Could probably be piping them closer to the edge, but that's okay. I think even though a lot of my lines were very shaky and crooked, this so far has been the most success I've had with a piping bag, so I will take that win where I can. I also think that it really helped that I made my icing thicker so that it wasn't kind of spreading out, which it had in the past. So I think each time I try it, I do get a little bit better. It also is so fun to spread the icing with the toothpick. Like, it just is so satisfying. Just seeing it all kind of fill in. Alright, so while these first segments of the pumpkins dry, I'm going to go ahead and start coloring the icing for the bats. So here is our icing bowl for the bats. I'm going to grab a toothpick. Maybe I'll grab two. And then here's our violet food coloring. I thought that the purple for the bats would be kind of cute, especially if I didn't really want to mess with doing black. And here are our bat cookies, and these ones are much smaller. So you can see, I mean, we have 7 of these cookies like we did for the pumpkins and the ghosts, but these are just not going to need as much icing. And I think I'm just going to be a little bit lazy and just dip them in the icing again. So I'm going to just drop them in the icing and pick it up. Let a little bit of the icing drip off if it will. Here's our bad cookie, so I definitely need to smooth that out a little bit. This one had lots of cratering on the cookie, but that's okay because we're just going to smooth everything out anyways. This one has lots to smooth out around the edges. Alright, so those are all of our bats. So while the pumpkins finish drying and the bats dry, I'm going to try using these Food Writer edible color markers. And these ones are in black. And I saw these at the store and I thought that these would be a great way to add little details to cookies without needing to fuss with extra royal icing. So I'm going to try this out on a ghost cookie. So these markers have a fine tip and then a bold tip version. I'm going to start out with a fine tip, and then I did accidentally smudge one of these ghost cookies while it was drying. So I'm going to try and use this. I am just going to try and draw little eyes. And a little smile. Just like that. That is so cheesy, but I think it's actually really cute. And I think I need to let the white icing dry a little bit more because I feel like it was kind of struggling. It almost felt like it was wanting to break through. But I think I'm going to leave it like that and have them just be kind of goofy. But I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of the rest of them now. I am always looking for tips and easy ways that I can decorate my cookies a little bit better. So please feel free to leave any tips or help if you have it in the comments. I always love just kind of learning what I can do a little bit better. Sometimes I'm lazy and just choose not to give much effort, but I do think that these are turning out pretty cute. Alright, so my ghosts now have their cute little faces. I'm going to go ahead and try and pipe the rest of these pumpkins, the centers. And take my toothpick and just kind of spread that out again. Okay, I think the segments are going to be funny, wonky segments, but they are in fact segments. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the pumpkins just like that. I was pretty pleased with how these pumpkin segments turned out. I think that I could have been a lot more neat with it, obviously, but overall, I think that these turned out really cute. And it really wasn't that difficult. It's just me having to get the right consistency with my icing. I decided to try doing the remaining 4 pumpkins, just piping all of them at once and then going back through with my toothpick. And honestly, this was great because the icing flooded in and didn't leave me very much that I needed to spread out. So I do have a tiny bit of this plain white icing left, and what I'm going to do is add a little bit of green food coloring so that I can do the stems of the pumpkin. I had a lot of fun mixing all of the different colors for these cookies, so I think in the future I'm definitely going to play around with the food coloring a little bit more. These little green stems were so cute, and I thought about trying to add a little green leaf as well, but I decided I did not want to push my luck too much. Alright, so the pumpkins I think are pretty much done. And then now I'm gonna go ahead and try and decorate these bats just a tiny bit more. I think that the purple for the bats turned out really cute, and I'm glad that I did that so that I could do these adorable little faces in black. I'm gonna do a trial bat and see if I can do little lines on the wings just to give them a little bit more definition. Try it on this bat first. I'm thinking I want to do a little like line from this point down to this point and then kind of just like that. So we'll see if I can do that nicely. I did learn for each color that I needed to trim the piping bags smaller and smaller, so each of my lines for each color kind of turns out thinner. So I'm glad that I did these bats last because even though these lines aren't perfect, they certainly look better thinner, I think, than they would have if they were thick lines. Alright, so those kind of came out a little bit funky. I'm going to try and clean that one up a tiny bit. There we go. But overall, I think that those turned out super cheesy and cute. I wish that I could do the faces a little bit better, but seeing how I couldn't get these lines perfect, I don't think I would have been able to pipe like just the eyes and the smiles nicely, so I'm happy that I did get the markers. These are the cookies the night before they fully dried, and I think that they turned out so cute. They're so cheesy, but I honestly loved them. And I loved these bats too. I think that they were really cute with those added lines on the wings. And then this ghost cracked me up because I kind of made it look like it had a screaming face. But overall, I thought these were so fun. Here are the cookies all plated the next day for my husband to take into work. You can see that some of the black did end up bleeding into the white frosting a little bit, but I think that they still turned out pretty cute. I hope that you enjoyed this video of me baking some adorable, very tasty Halloween cookies. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.